what we are going to watch right now is a interview with one of the new Rebel reporters and this other guy. And this other guy works for an organization called Free to Care. And Free to Care is an organization that is speaking out against Bill C-6. And we'll get into all the nitty gritty, but Bill C-6 is a law that's being passed to federally mandate or make illegal conversion therapy for both gay conversion therapy, but also trans conversion therapy. And we'll get into those specifics as we go. But this is sort of how the interview gets sort of set up, and I guess we'll just get into it. See what this guy has to say. Let me know if it's loud enough. And all that.
Adam Sos here for Rebel News, and I'm with Jojo Ruba of Free to Care. For those not following the story, Bill C-6, a bill that discusses a ban on any notion of conversion therapy, is currently being debated and discussed in Parliament. Jojo Ruba with Free to Care is one of the people who is maybe speaking back against the one-sided presentation of Bill C-6. So maybe for folks who aren't familiar, if you could just give a little bit of an update about when Bill C-6 started, what Bill C-6 is.
So before we get Jojo Ruba's response to this, I do want to say, notice the framing already is that Adam Sues, I think is what he said his name was. He framed this as like people have issues with versions of conversion therapy. So they're already framing where it's like, sure, there's some conversion therapy that's bad, but not all conversion therapy. And you can tell like that's an important sort of like strategic maneuver that they can make, because they're already aware that the public perception of the public perception of conversion therapy is already negative. So they realize they can't just be like, we are pro conversion therapy. They instead have to go, sure, this thing that everyone hates is bad, but we have this other little thing that's really good and it shouldn't get thrown out.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of framing, though, Jody, I just wanted to say that they picked like the absolute perfect spot in this tiny restaurant where you can watch every patron of that restaurant go to take a shit with the bathroom door right behind them. Like, what the fuck?
I think at some point in this interview as well, you can hear Toxic by Britney Spears playing in the background.
Oh, that's hey, like that shit. That's a solid way to get these assholes' videos pulled, because
well, now like,
if it gets flagged,
it's very the volume is very low. I don't think we're gonna get dinged with it. Like, I think it's playing in a commercial, because as like you can see, I feel like it's in a hotel bar, because it looks like there's a bar off to a side, and you can see the sort of like TV playing.
Yeah, I just why the hell did they pick this particular spot in this restaurant? Like, whatever.
You would think, yeah, I have no clue. The explanation behind why here is beyond me. I have no clue. I thought the exact same thing, which is like they could have found, like, even done it in a hotel room, or so, like found some room that's like a little less noisy.
Another sort of noticeable thing too is that they're not wearing masks and they're inside.
Yeah.
So I wonder like where this is where location-wise this is taking place.
I want to say Edmonton or Calgary, and the reason why is I know Adam is based out of Calgary, and so is Jojo.
Yeah.
So that leads me to believe that they would be in Calgary.
Is this a new guy, Adam, or like I haven't ever seen him before?
Yes. So this is the first. The first time I heard about him was when they did the like, look at our new hires, which was like was like a month ago, wasn't it? Less than a month ago. So he's really fresh. He's super fresh. I think he started getting involved when they were doing things like the pastor at Grace Life Church was being arrested. I think he was initially just doing filming of that. And now this is the first piece I've ever seen of him doing like an interview like this. So this could be like new territory for Adam Sues. Which, based on this interview, I'm already not looking forward to.
Well,
The Prime Minister actually promised to ban conversion therapy as part of his election campaign. And so it wasn't a surprise when they brought it in earlier this year, because different municipal governments here in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and other places have already passed conversion therapy bans. The problem is how conversion therapy is defined. Just like when you want to ban, say, drinking and driving. If one municipal government bans drinking and driving for drinking beer, and another municipal government bans drinking and driving and they define it as including Coca-Cola, right? Those are two different kinds of bans.
What? What, like, even before we get into the specifics of what's going on here, this is clearly a shitty analogy.
It's, yeah, I can't even. It's hard to even follow why that's relevant.
I was literally having, like, I told my friend this maybe like 3 days ago about, like, as a little kid, my family went to Wendy's and my dad, like, picked up his Diet Coke and had a sip while driving home. And I, like, freaked the fuck out. Like, I screamed crying because he drank while driving. And there's no drinking and driving. And it's like, this is a little kid logic of, like, a 4-year-old that he's trying to apply to conversion therapy.
Well, he's going to say, like, this is like what I stipulated earlier, which is that he's trying to make the argument that, like, clearly everybody knows, like, drinking alcohol and driving is bad, but, like, drinking Coke and driving is completely fine. And, like, these are both drinking and driving, but it's like, and then he's going to apply that to conversion therapy and saying that, like, clearly there's, like, bad conversion therapy, but we're the Diet Coke version in this drinking and driving analogy, you know? And it's just like, no, I mean, like, we can spell out the moral case right here, which is the problem with conversion therapy is the fact that it perceives something like being gay as not being a good, or, like, you know, or something that needs to be fixed. So even if, like, in one case you're torturing someone to make them not gay, and in one case you're just politely asking them, you're still coming from the position that being gay is not right. Therefore, it's like, no matter how you try to, like, whitewash it with these analogies, you're still the bad person. Like, I don't know how. Like, it's clear to me that they need to make it this complicated, because they know they have no other way of trying to convince people that what they're doing is a good thing.
The problem is that the conversion therapy ban, the way it's defined, conversion therapy in the federal legislation, is not used by any other government or medical association anywhere in the world, except for a handful of Alberta cities, the province of Quebec, and one city in Saskatchewan. The rest of the country, including Ontario, Vancouver, Nova Scotia, I think Yukon, have banned conversion therapy, but they've very much defined it less or more specifically than the government has. What the government has done is.
Did he already? Sorry, I got distracted by Nick's comment. So he has this as the overview. Now, this is a very weird statement. So it says Bill C-6 would amend the criminal code to prohibit certain activities that relate to conversion therapy, which is defined as practices, treatment, or services designed to change an individual's sexual orientation to heterosexual or gender identity to cisgender, or to reduce non-heterosexual sexual attraction or sexual behavior. Specifically, the bill would enact new offenses to prohibit. Now, the thing that I find weird about this is I could not find this exact wording anywhere. This is the actual bill that's being proposed. So again, it's only past second reading here. But if you scroll down, this is the definition of conversion therapy in the bill. 1 second, I have to fix my camera before we read it, because for some reason my camera wanted to quit. Come on, give me a link. What are you doing here? Yeah, I know. I hate. I want to get a new camera or something, but I gotta find the time to do that, and yeah, and also, like, try to, like, figure out, like, ways, like, maybe, because it might not just be the camera, could be some other shit, but this is getting ridiculous at this point. It's really frustrating. I hate that this happens, and I don't know why it's happening, but it's happening. And now I gotta mute myself. There we go. The thing that I have projecting me also starts like playing my microphone. So where was I? Definition of conversion therapy, according to the second reading of this bill, says in sections. Okay, we don't have to read that. Conversion therapy means a practice, treatment, or service designed to change a person's sexual orientation to heterosexual, to change a person's gender identity or gender expression to cisgender, or to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior or non-cisgender expression. For greater certainty, this definition does not include a practice, treatment, or service that relates to the exploration and development of an integrated personal identity without favoring any particular sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. That's the definition as given here, but for some reason they're quoting this other thing, which I don't know where they got it, either from like a first reading or from some other source.
Including Ontario, Vancouver, Nova Scotia, North, I think Yukon have banned conversion therapy, but they very much defined it less or more specifically than the government has. What the government has done is they've actually defined conversion therapy as two things. They ban both counseling and support to change someone's orientation, but then they also say, or to reduce or repress non-heterosexual attractions or behavior. So now we have counseling that's supposed to it's called conversion therapy, that would reduce someone's behavior, even if someone wants to reduce that behavior. So things like pornography use or sex addictions. That kind of support would now only be available to straight Canadians, not LGBTQ Canadians.
What?
What?
See, here's the thing. There's one
What?
direction I thought he was going, and then he takes it in this like other direction. Which the one direction I was thinking he was going was that like what we're not allowed to like at all help people who choose to want to have this done. And that's a problem because like the problem there is the society. Like the reason why someone might want to change it, like a behavior like that, is because they feel guilt or shame because of like societal expectations or something like this. So that's one part of it. But then he moves it into saying because it says or behavior in the definition. So let's pull up even our definition had it, right? So it says here to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. So the idea is he's saying is like you can't tell someone to stop watching gay porn if they're addicted to pornography. But that's not what this covers, right? This is saying you can't tell people to reduce a non-heterosexual behavior because there's something wrong with that behavior. That's the problem. There's nothing wrong with the watching of the gay porn. And we've gone over porn addiction in our no-fap shit that we've gone over and how that's largely not a legit thing. That being said, nothing in this would, if porn addiction was a real thing, nothing in this would prevent your therapist, if you're a gay person, from telling you that maybe you should like stop watching porn. The issue is treating gay people differently than straight people and saying you shouldn't watch gay porn because there's something wrong with gay sex. That is the whole point of this. I don't know how he jumps to that fucking conclusion though. Jesus.
And as someone who went through that counseling myself, I can say it was not torture. It was something that I chose as an adult, as a consenting adult, and that helped me process what I believe, what my faith is, what my idea of identity is. What the government is basically saying is you cannot get that support and you must embrace the identity we have given you. And that's one part of it. The Canadian Psychological...
So this is someone who claims to have been benefited from gay conversion therapy of some straight. And notice like, it always becomes a faith-based thing. And part of me goes, and we're going to get, I can get into the law right now, because the thing that already sort of annoys me is this framing of like,
Association.
He's going to make it sound like, oh, but what about me? I'm someone, as an adult, who on my own free will, even though I would argue there's probably a lot of social pressures going on there, of my own free will, I went out and sought out this therapy, and it helped me because now I don't have certain urges that I might have had before, or something like this. But nothing in this bill really speaks to the scenario that he's talking about, and I'll show you why. So it talks about, so it gives you the definition of conversion therapy. And then it talks about forced conversion therapy. So it says everyone who knowingly causes a person to undergo conversion therapy without the person's consent is A, guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment. And anyways, you're guilty if you force someone without their consent to attend conversion therapy. And then it says causing child to undergo conversion therapy. So then the government is also saying that if you're 18 years or under, you can't consent to it because you're a child and your parents can't force you to go, all that fun stuff. So that's cool. Then it says like you can't claim that you were mistaken of the age of the person. So you can't say, well, I didn't know they were under 18. This is what this stipulates. And then you can't advertise conversion therapy or materially benefit from it. So there is a sense in which, yes, maybe parts of the therapy that he wanted won't be available because you can't advertise it and you can't monetarily benefit off of it. But if he wanted to go to his pastor or whoever he wants on a faith-based thing and say, listen, pastor, I want to get rid of whatever, as much as we would say that that's like a problematic ethically because he doesn't understand, he's not self-reflecting on the fact that maybe the hatred here is because of society and his religion or whatever, right? The point being is like, there's nothing in the law that stipulates that he couldn't do what I just described. The point is, like, you don't want the law, you don't want therapists who should know better mandating that something like being gay is not right or normal. That is the whole reason why you don't want to have gay conversion therapy. I think it's pretty obvious.
American Psychological Association, all of those define conversion therapy as only a change in orientation. And behavior modification can happen within that, but not independent of that. The other thing here is what's really important is conversations, especially with your own kids. So we have a situation where the bill actually prevents advertising, and they added the word promotion to the definition of advertising of conversion therapy. The word promotion means verbal communication. So if you're taking your child, and she wants, as young as 7 years old, she comes to you and she says, I'm struggling with my gender identity, I may be a boy, can I see a counselor to help me embrace my biological identity? So she wants that support. This bill would prevent the adult, the parent, from even giving information to that child about where to get counseling that would reduce this non-cisgender gender identity, and then that would be criminal. So that she can go to the mom or dad can go to jail for 3.
So notice the framing there, right? It would be criminal to tell them that they can't seek out treatments to reduce this non-cisgender conforming therapy. And it's like, yes, because there is no such thing as like, well, I mean, there is such thing as conversion therapy. It's just not a good thing because you shouldn't be telling people that being trans is a wrong that needs to be fixed. Like, this is why, like, he, even though he wants to try to, like, use these manipulative terms of, like, oh, we're just talking about adults who are making free choices, and we're just talking about, like, you know, we're the Diet Coke version of the alcoholic version of drunk driving, and, like, all this. And really, at the end of the day, it's about going, we want available therapies that tell you that being a certain way is not good, when those being a certain way is either being gay or trans. Which is the whole point of why that is not, there's no basis in medicine for that kind of conclusion, right? It's a moral conclusion, and I would argue it's an immoral conclusion to come to that conclusion. It's not scientific, you know? Ain't no 7-year-old saying that. Well, yeah, not. Yeah. Good point. You know, I skirted right over top of the fact that, like, no 7-year-old is going to come around with a very, like, in-depth, hello, father, I would like to seek this type of therapy because I am so well read upon the current therapies that are involved in the condition that I am currently feeling right now. It's so ridiculous.
3 years. If they bring that child to a counselor, that counselor can go to jail for 5 years if Bill C-6 passes.
So what it sounds like you're saying is it's very sort of pedantic and diminutive towards LGBTQ individuals. It's almost saying that they're not smart enough to make up their own decisions, and that the government is going to handle this for you, which is probably an extremely troubling development. Could you maybe touch a little bit more on? Has there been any response from members within the LGBT community? Are there people on the other side potentially who are agreeing with you on this?
Well,
And I will say, no one is agreeing with him on this. But yeah, Vienna, you feel like you have thoughts? Other than Sai?
Yeah, just like fuck off, bro. Like,
And like the fact that they made it about like, this is going to harm the LGBTQ community, because if they really wanted to convert, like, you're now saying that they're not capable of making decisions for themselves, that you have to step in. And it's like, no, like, the point is, you don't want, like, they talk about this in terms about like conversion therapy doesn't even exist really, or at least not in the capacities that they're talking about. And it's like, you exist as like an example of it actually existing. And maybe we shouldn't have the chance of you going to therapy as a trans person and possibly getting a therapist that's going to try to talk you out of it, or try to tell you that
the thing
it's
is
like...
to
Anyways, yeah.
The way that he like framed it as like LGBTQ people on the other side, or like those on the other side being the LGBTQ community, so automatically like recognizing that they're going against them by doing this like circuitous pro conversion therapy argument.
Yeah.
Also, I ice cream, so now I have energy, which is why I'm talking more.
That's all right. I appreciate the ice cream. It is a warm day out, so stay refreshed. Gotcha.
We've been trying to get this information out for people to understand, but your
my cold
point is
Pepsi.
absolutely right on. In an interview with the CBC, Dr. Chris Wells, who's not a medical doctor, he is, I think, sociologist by trade. He's the one who's been pushing these laws. He's in Edmonton and been pushing these laws all over Alberta. He actually compared LGBTQ people who want to get this counseling to drunk drivers who should not be allowed to make any choices when it comes to their medical care. Now,
Now, it's not a one-to-one, but it is ironic that he made a similar comparison earlier.
Yeah.
Conversion therapy, and it's like, so I was curious. What was this comparison that was made that is so egregious that he needs to talk about? And so this is a video on their website. I don't recommend going to their website. It's just boring as hell. But I couldn't find this clip anywhere else. I had to come to this website to friggin' find this clip. So here it is. It's from a CBC interview, apparently. So this is this evil sociologist who's against us.
straight.
Even though some adults of their own free will seek out some version of conversion therapy, Wells says the practice is simply dangerous, regardless of age.
There are all kinds of practices that we restrict adults from engaging in, even if they should desire, such as driving a car without a seatbelt, driving their motor vehicle while intoxicated or impaired, because we know that this just doesn't harm themselves, but it's detrimental to the values and beliefs of our society.
So he takes it. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's a great analogy, but he takes this analogy and turns it into, he's just saying that LGBTQ people can't think for themselves, and he's trying to like nanny state it. And what he's saying is that like, if your society allows it to be the case that you can have groups of therapists conducting therapy, like therapeutic procedures that tell you that you're you being gay or you being trans is not correct and we need to change it, that is like an indictment of our society, just as if we were to allow drunk people to just go around drinking and driving and running into people, that even though one might want to have it done, or one might, like Jojo here, want to go to conversion therapy, the mere act of allowing it seems to cut against our societal values. And so I think there's like some merit to the analogy he's making that differs from what he's saying, even though I think it's a kind of weird analogy, if that makes sense.
I think to try and Time Trading brought up a decent point, saying like it was also an interview, so like he might just have been on the spot trying to think
Yeah.
of a shitty analogy, and it didn't work out well.
Yeah.
And also, more importantly, Tea Time asked if you got an ad blocker.
I did not get an ad blocker. I did see your
Ooh.
shot in the Discord. Maybe in the future, once I get more experience with that shit, but no.
Bully Jody on Twitter.
Yeah. Listen, I am well aware of my technological ineptitude. I am well aware of it, and I'm working on it, okay? Small steps. Small steps, but we'll get there. One day I will be transcendent technologically. I will be telepathically communicating with you all because we have all been plugged into the network, and we'll all be good. But until
Notice
that
how
time...
Jody uses the same arguments that the liberals use to avoid getting things done in Parliament.
What? Do I?
Yep. You say, oh, yeah, you know, get around to it eventually. We'll do it one day. One day I'll get there and I'll do the good thing. And then you say it and it never happens.
I will, in my defense, compared to an entire government, I'm one person with like time constraints. And it's not my job to be good at ad blocking, all right? So, let's be clear.
Jody is confirmed a liberal.
Nailed it. All right.
I'm not sure if he knows the fact that people choose to reduce behavior of any kind. We use depending on their gender identity or sexual orientation, they have a right to do that. We have a right to do that. All Canadians should. This bill would prevent LGBTQ Canadians from getting that support. So what was interesting is when we're able to present these facts to well-meaning, well-reasoned LGBTQ people, they see it as well. So in Calgary, when we were pushing against a similar bylaw, very similarly worded because it's the same group of people pushing this, and we presented these facts to LGBTQ people we met on the streets, they actually sided with us. And they realized what we were saying was right. Because
I forgot this part was in here. So I already exited out of it. I'll bring up Free to Care's website again. Because this reminds me, I was clicking around their website. And in one section, they had I guess they did like a questionnaire that they mailed out to people, which is sort of different than what he's saying. But just to highlight like the leading questions. Because they do have leading questions. Because like I feel like even if he's walking down the street and he's telling people this, my guess is they're all, and he's saying they're agreeing with us. It's probably because he was asking leading questions. What Canadians think? Okay, here it is. So I'll pull it over. We'll see what Canadians think here. So look at this question here. It goes, do you agree, somewhat disagree, or disagree with the following? Consenting adults should be free to get the sexuality counseling of their choice, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity.
What the fuck does that mean?
And so clearly, 78% of people agree with that. Because, like, yeah. But then what does that have to do with, like, conversion therapy? You know what I mean? Are you comfortable?
It's just like phrased so vaguely.
Oh, so
like,
vaguely.
Sounds vaguely. It sounds like just affirming enough to like queer people that it, like everybody's like, okay, yeah, I'm for that.
Are you comfortable, somewhat uncomfortable, or uncomfortable with the government making it illegal to provide counseling to gay individuals to reduce unwanted sexual behavior, but at the same time allow straight individuals to get the exact same counseling to reduce unwanted sexual behavior? So again, you can see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to say, see, people support like our version of conversion therapy because all we want to do is get rid of unwanted sexual behavior. But like when you just put it like this, unwanted sexual behavior, what the fuck does that mean? Nothing in this question gets to the actual like question of like, should gay people seek therapy that tells them that being gay is wrong? You know? Which is the whole point of this. It's amazing. So my guess, he wants to claim here that like, oh, we're totally like unbiased, and like we're just asking people on the street and they agree with us. When it's like, what questions are you asking them? What?
definition that's being used in Bill C-6 is not used by any medical association. It's not used by any government, federal government, anywhere else in the world. Any of the U.S. states that have passed laws, any of the U.S. municipal governments have passed laws, have always made sure they targeted sexual orientation change counseling, not behavioral counseling, like Bill C-6 does.
So, with an ideological push like this, the way that it's proceeding within
I will say just a quick like follow up to that claim, because I watched some of the arguments with our MPs about this, and they were very clear that like nothing about this or a lot of like the wording might be dissimilar from the earlier things, but nothing about the wording will lead to the conclusions that he's saying, like that somehow your therapist can't tell you to stop watching porn or something like that, because however he's interpreting sexual behavior there, they all say that that's not how the law works. So I don't understand the line of reasoning here where they say such and such a law exactly like this isn't anywhere. No, exactly. I mean, you'll find this as well even when they'll bring up the trans stuff, where they'll talk about like, well, the UK blocked puberty blockers, therefore, and it's like, who, like, so another place did it. Like, why does that matter? So it's not written exactly like this anywhere else. Why does that matter, right? Like, give me a reason for why that matters. And his reason, which we've already heard, was a pretty fucking silly reason. Very silly.
Parliament, is it normal, or has
Turf
there been
Island
some?
did it?
I've heard obviously there's the common practice of stipulating anyone opposed to this is bigoted or a fearmonger. What has the
it's all
experience
just
been like
cancel
for you,
culture.
being one of the people decrying this ridiculous bill, and then for discussion within Parliament?
It was interesting because I actually testified at the Justice Committee, and we have other friends who did the same. And the other side, including the NDP, the Bloc, the Liberals, the Greens, basically dismissed what we were saying, even though we pointed out specifically the legislation, where in the wording was the legislation. You know how they dismissed it? They would quote things like the federal government's Justice Committee's websites, or they would quote the intent of the Justice Minister. But none of those things are actually law. They're not actually in the word.
Intent matters. Like when the Supreme Court or other judicial bodies rule on these matters, intent matters. Like all the lawyers have to do is like, here's what the lawmakers were saying when they passed this legislation. Like, intent matters. Like, I can't fucking believe these ignorant pieces of shit. Like they always like, this is like a common theme, which is also why I wanted to talk about this. The right wing is legally inept. They're just legally inept. And I don't even have a law degree, and I know more about the law than these assholes. And like the thing is, I think they actually do know about the law. They purposefully try to obfuscate it, knowing that other people don't know how the law works. It's so fucking frustrating that they could just lie about this shit constantly. Constantly. Oh, like, no doubt about it. Like, I'm not saying that, like, we should, like, but I don't know how to fix that in the law, because here's the thing, like, so Tea Time is talking about, like, judicial discretion and stuff like that. And, like, part of the thing is you can't fix that in the law because words are fucking words. And, like, words are, as much as we like to think that language is simple, like, we can interpret and reinterpret a single word. And even tone matters and all this shit, right? So, like, you I don't know how you fix judicial discretion other than, like, shaming judges who make bad decisions. I don't know. And, like, this, like, leads to, like, other issues of just, like, issues with legalism in general, but that's probably a way too in-depth discussion for future stuff. But the fact is like, regardless, they don't understand how the law works, and it's frustrating.
Wording of the law, the bill itself. So
it's not just the worst
conservatives who were
interpretation;
mostly
it's
the ones speaking against
it's
this,
the interpretation
pointed
that
this out and
sides
actually
with them
wanted
that
to
they
add
want
an
to.
amendment, putting the words from the Justice Department's website into the bill, and was defeated. Now, what's interesting too was a Bloc Québécois member of the Justice Committee who raised these very same concerns, particularly about gender identity. So at the Justice Committee, they actually added the term gender expression as one of those protected clauses where you cannot help change someone's gender expression, even if they want that change. And it was the Bloc Québécois MP himself who said he's very concerned about what that means. Does that mean he can't tell his 10-year-old son that he shouldn't wear makeup and he shouldn't do that as long as he lives in his house? because that would be reducing gender expression behavior. And that's what this bill does by moving away from orientation change and including behavior independent of orientation change. It now actually criminalizes parenting counseling that a parent may give their child.
So I watched that exchange.
What?
Yeah, so there was an exchange in the House of Commons where Bloc Québécois was like, MP was like, what if my son it was the daughter came to me and was like, I want to wear pants to school, and I counsel them not to wear pants and encourage them to wear a skirt, even though he's like, I personally would never do that. Like, under the law, like, will I be in trouble for based on, and in particular he points to the word in the law that says practice, I think it is. So it says does not for greater certainty, this definition does not include conversion therapy means a practice, treatment, or service. And so he was focusing on that parental behavior would be a practice, would it not? And the legal scholars that came back on this seem to say that a practice does not refer to that kind of behavior between a parent and a kid. Although certainly that behavior is immoral. I think if you like force hey, it's that guy in streams again. I am in streams again. Certainly that would be immoral for a parent to do that to their child. But then it's like, practice here usually means like, someone who has a practice, like a therapist. That's that. It doesn't cover parents, right? Because it's not conversion therapy for you to be a shitty parent, right? And I don't think anything in this law like speaks to that. It could be child abuse if then as a parent you then force them into conversion therapy, which is clearly covered in the law right here. But it's weird that they come up with these like little like sort of like weird scenarios that you can imagine. Well, they're not weird scenarios. I in fact can imagine a scenario where a parent would do something that shitty to their child. But it's like has nothing to do with this law. And as much as like they're never going to accept the fact that all the legal scholars that look at this stuff who say that that's never going to happen, and they'll be like, well, it could happen. Just like Bill C-16 could have like prevented anyone who misgendered was going to spend like 20 years in a Canadian gulag, right? According to Jordan Peterson.
Yep. After the lockdown or during the next lockdown, forever lockdown.
What do you think the lockdown was? That was collective punishment for all the misgendering that happened. We were all sentenced to a personal gulags.
Yeah, legally it was a war crime. You're right.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill C-16.
We're taking the Canadian government to The Hague. We're activating the Hague Invasion Act.
If university was free, I would get a psychology degree. Go for it. I got a psychology degree. I don't know if it's well, I got a bachelor's in it. I don't know if it's worth that much. I can at least read the papers and know what they're talking about. Which helps me do a podcast, maybe.
Any sort of traditional religious communities, whether Christian, Muslim, Sikh, otherwise, that adhere to values that are contrary to perhaps those espoused by the LGBTQ, that this law would then come in direct contradiction with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's what.
I just want to pause there. No, it would not come under direct contradiction with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Like, let's just put it this way. You have the freedom to worship whatever you want, right? Freedom of religion in Canadian society. But if you believe in a religious faith that tells you that it's like morally good to just murder people in the streets, I don't think like any of the faiths fit this profile I'm painting here. But if you are a religion that believes that, you don't then get to just murder people in the streets if society like passes laws saying you can't just murder people in the streets. And it's not an infringement of your charter rights to freedom of religion that you're not allowed to murder people in the streets based on your religion. I mean, I guess a better analogy would be Jehovah's Witnesses that believe that blood transfusions go against their faith. it is still illegal in this country to prevent your child. It's medical neglect to prevent your child from getting blood transfusions just because you as Jehovah's Witnesses believe something that it's like not right to do. I don't know why that's so hard to fucking figure out, but there you have it. Everything is religion is being persecuted constantly. And it's usually Christian religions. But of course he had to lump in Muslim and Sikh to make it seem like, no, it's other faiths too.
What our legal experts are saying, and that's why the other side is saying, oh, it doesn't violate religious liberties, it doesn't do this or do that. But again, all they're referencing are things that are actually not in the bill. All we're pointing out to is just read the wording yourself. And especially the promotional ban, the advertising ban, that ban actually is the one that will prevent conversations with your kids. So if your child is looking for counseling support and you offer that, that is potentially under the criminal code. Now, here's the thing.
Because, you know, when I recommending something to my child, it's advertising. I want to read the fucking bill again. Advertising. Everyone who knowingly promotes or advertises an offer to provide conversion therapy. Like, it sounds to me like everyone who knowingly promotes or advertises an offer to provide conversion therapy. I mean, maybe that could, like, very loosely apply to a parent if the parent is like, here, I'm offering to provide to take you to this therapist over here who's going to provide you this therapy kind of thing. But I'm going to jail for converting your kids to be socialists. Yep. No government's going to tell me not to do it. I'm going to keep doing it.
This bill is what's called complaint-based. So even if your child wants the counseling, if she were to tell her teacher that she got this counseling and was really happy to get this support, the teacher now can complain against the parents or the church or the mosque or the synagogue. And because it's a criminal law,
Congratulations on your promotion.
Investigate criminal
I can't remember. Is it Tricer or
so
Tricker?
even if this isn't actually violating any charter rights,
down low.
Holy shit.
Tricker. Pretty sure.
Okay, son, that's what I thought. Tricker, thank you very much. That is so kind of you. Much appreciated.
Woo!
Yeah.
Because I'm young and I'm black and my hat's down low.
Nice. I was hoping to get the sounds coming in here. Because I'm young and I'm black and my hat's down low. It's very kind of you. I appreciate it. I will say we recently as well surpassed the $100 mark. So I got my first Twitch payout for so thank you so much everyone who supports it. I mean, all the money goes into me improving the equipment and whatnot. So it's always nice. It'll improve me presenting this to you. And
I'm young and I'm black and my hat's
maybe
down
it
low.
could go to me getting ad block for tea time as well. So but thank you, Tricker. That is very, very kind. I can't even remember what the hell he was talking about, and really it doesn't matter at this point. I'm sure he's gonna get to his fucking point.
Because I'm young and I'm black and my hat's down low.
Loving all this Jay-Z here.
What it does is it could create a scenario where people.
Oh, you can hear the Britney Spears. Just listen, gently listen. You can hear the Britney Spears in the background.
What it does is it could create a scenario where
people
who are wanting to destroy an organization or a church can create all kinds of.
It's there. It's definitely Toxic by Britney Spears. I know those violin swells anywhere I hear them.
I wonder if a hotel worker just like saw them talking about homophobic bullshit and then put on Toxic by Britney Spears for that reason.
They should have
solidarity with those hotel workers.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the case, word of advice, crank it up a lot more. Just take it to 11, you know? It's still a little soft.
And they may be completely baseless, but it's the volume that would destroy the organization, even if it's not true.
Hey, like, imagine what he's saying here. So, I mean, I know we were focusing on the Britney Spears thing, but the whole argument there, though, that whole stretch was basically these churches, they're going to be overwhelmed by complaints that, like, they won't know what to do with them and it'll destroy churches. And it's like, okay, if the church is doing conversion therapy and we as a society agree that conversion therapy is bad, fuck them churches. Why is that an argument against this? It's so stupid. And yeah, this fucking, we don't need this advertisement.
The other question I suppose I would have was, is there a demand for this within the LGBTQ community, or is it that ideologues are pushing this? One would wonder why an opportunity to pursue something would be so malign, and it seems more like an ideological opposition than a service demand.
Well, part of it is they've.
What's wrong with an ideological position?
Very.
It's like, I don't know. Maybe it's good to have certain ideological or moral commitments. Maybe our laws should be based on moral concerns.
Also, just like questioning if there is demand to end conversion therapy
Yeah.
by the LGBTQ community. Like, what? Huh? Yes.
And then you're showing activists
don't like it.
that literally are doing. Gay kids need love, not a
Yeah.
cure. Like, yeah, exactly. Because really, like, it's one of these things where it's like, yes, okay, like, in whoever this person is, JoJo, I don't know their life story. I don't know why they came to the conclusions they did and all this bullshit. But it's like, still, at the end of the day, it's like, it tells me more about society that he felt the way that he needed to do to change whatever impulses he had. Because there's, like, why... What I don't get from anything that he says, and I've listened to some of the other testimonials, and granted, on the website, Free to Care, there's only 3 testimonials of people who enjoy conversion therapy or like their version of it. And all of their stories seem to come from a place of like their negative feelings towards the idea that they were gay or had what they were like referring to as like gay urges or like whatever. And it's like, so what is driving that negative affect, though? Because it's like, clearly you feel negative about this because you're being told that it's wrong to be this way. Or else, why would you have that negative affect? So it says to me, it's like, there's nothing about this, or like, the only reason that people like JoJo exist is because of their own negative affect towards something that's like, you shouldn't feel negative towards. Or there should be no reason to feel negative towards. So it's like, I'm sorry you have those negative feelings, but like, we as a society should treat being gay as completely cool and based. And just leave it at that.
Yes.
Strongly and making conversion therapy akin to torture in terms of their
Also,
definition. And no one supports torture. But one of the questions that's never been answered by us, by the other side that we've asked, is how often does this actually happen? Are there, the way they talk is that there's a gay child being tortured in every church basement in the country. And I've never seen that.
Now, okay, it's much more underground, Will says. It might be happening after business hours. It might be happening in a basement, or unfortunately, it's still happening in some faith communities and cultural communities under the guise of praying away the gay, or that homosexuality doesn't exist in that community, and anyone who shows same-sex tendency or who's gender diverse needs to be fixed or cured in order to gain acceptance in their community. And he's like, oh, like, it's all conspiracy theory, like, everyone's hiding in, like, basements, and it's like, that's not what he says here. And again, like, he makes it sound like there's an element in which you don't even need to propose that it's underground, because people like you, JoJo, are saying that it's not underground. You're promoting it very not in a hotel lobby promoting this. But it's like, there's people, I've seen their work, that promote various versions of conversion therapy. It's not underground. It's bad, and it needs to go away. Especially the trans conversion therapy. Barbara Kay has promoted trans conversion therapy in the National Post. Because I always have to get it in here. Fuck Barbara Kay. But yeah, fuck Barbara Kay.
Mm-hmm.
Professional counseling agency already is against any kind of coerced counseling. And even frankly, the people who initially coined the term conversion therapy in the 70s and 80s were a bunch of religious counselors who said this will not work if you force it on someone. Mm-hmm. So right from the very beginning, it was never something that was supposed to be forced on anybody. And the question that we keep asking is, which of the criminal offenses does conversion therapy not violate? So, for example, if we're talking about being forced or tortured, there's already laws against torture. There's already laws against forcible confinement or kidnapping. Those are all criminal already. So what does this law actually cover that isn't covered by other criminal laws? We haven't had an answer from the other side yet.
What, like, this is so fucking stupid. But like, there's a reason why, for example, this is actually relates a lot to critical race theory and like the people who argue against that, which is this preference towards a legal color blindness, or in this case, a like sexuality blindness or gender identity blindness, and saying that just because the law already says that torture is not allowed, so but then you have to ask yourself, well, what is considered torture in our society? If we're a society that deems that being gay is a problem, then trying to get people who are gay to be not gay would be torture, even though it's not torture under like our legal system, right? And so it's like, yes, having a neutral law against coercion and torture is one thing, but like stipulating that no, this conversion therapy is an extra like additional fact that you can't claim that it isn't torture, that's important and necessary, because clearly this shit is still going on. In fact, Jojo, your evidence, this is still going on. Like, it's just so frustrating. It's amazing. Like, they use the same techniques in like every argument. It's just like they steal their little conservative talking points from everyone, and like they've always been bullshit. They're just always bullshit. The reasons we have laws is because it's easier to write things down and enforce them than it is to teach everyone how to behave. Yeah. But it's also like, I wish it was as simple of just being like, we should just have one law that says don't do bad things. And then people will just not do bad things, right?
And so it seems that this law would be suitable if there were like
don't oppress
characteristic, like anti-gay camps, and they were putting kids there. But that seems almost like an imagined dragon, an enemy that's not truly in existence. Is that what their rhetoric seems to be stipulating?
Yeah, and again, no one wants that to happen. That's why these laws are already in place against kidnapping and forced confinement, things like that. So we hear these horror stories from the other side about these people who've gone to camps or whatever, and they were forced, but oftentimes when you hear their stories, there's a conflation of things that are actually criminal and things like, well, someone prayed for me to change my orientation. Are they the same thing? This bill would treat them as the same thing. And there was a large study done by the CBO.
Well, if you're sending them to like a camp-like thing, or like if you're purposefully sending them to a group who's going to do this praying and tell you that you're immoral for engaging in the behavior you engage in and trying to like change you from being that person, then yeah, that would be a problem.
I just wanted to say real quick, Jody, that I think Brittany is correct. This person is indeed toxic.
Yeah. I didn't realize there's like a relationship between the title of that song and how shitty this human being is. Oh my god.
Their acronym is, I think, is CBRC, the Center for Research.
Just let people do
it's
consensual
pro-LGBT
things.
organization
It's so
associated
silly.
with Chris Wells. And they claim thousands of gay men that they've interviewed have gone through conversion therapy and were harmed by it. But when you actually go through their data, and
Oh, I was gonna say I got caught up in the other points. He's gonna look at some data here. There all the evidence shows, and I haven't looked out of this. Isn't citing studies. This is probably like from their own. It says UCLA School of Law have received conversion therapy. So there's just like stats here, but like when you look at the evidence, there's almost no evidence at all that conversion therapy is successful at all. Which is why, like, his activist group, you have 3 examples of people who claim to have been helped by this therapy. And usually what's helped them was not the change in their behavior, but was like the community that they want to be involved with is now embracing them in ways that they didn't before, so they feel less like social conflict. But that like says more about the society that treated them poorly in the first place for doing whatever they felt like they wanted to do. That wasn't hurting anybody, But there's no any evidence, if you try to like test this, most people, like, what does it count to be like cured of your gayness, or however they're putting it? Because most people who go through conversion therapy remain gay throughout their entire lives. Most people. Which tells me that this, even if he's right, the therapy doesn't even work in the first place. So why would we have a therapy that moralizes an issue that shouldn't be moralized? That should just be accepted and treated as like totally cool and okay. And it doesn't work anyway, so why are we doing it?
It's pretty obvious. I studied statistics. Anyone who knows statistics understands this. Their sample size is completely
Center for
flawed.
Research did a
So
study.
the only people they interviewed were
center?
people from gay organizations, gay dating websites, or gay bars. So wait a second. You're trying to find out if conversion therapy, an attempt of counseling to help change someone's orientation, actually works, but you're only interviewing gay people. Shouldn't you interview people who potentially may have benefited, like people at church, people at religious organizations? Because people like myself will never be captured in that interview process. So now they're touting these numbers, that thousands of...
Yeah, but most of the studies are done with people who actually did the therapy. Like, they're not, I don't know what the fuck he's referring to. It's not like they go, we're just going to ask people at gay bars if they're still gay. Like that. Don't know what the hell he's talking about. What they would have done was, like, you had people who are attending a therapeutic session, and then you follow up on them and see if they've like if they've changed, how behaviorally they've changed, like other stuff like that. You do a follow up. I have no fucking clue what he's talking about. But again, I mean, he's not only is he wrong about the law, but you just get to make up facts and information here too.
Canadians have gone through conversion therapy. They don't define what that is. Was it just someone praying for you and you felt uncomfortable, or was someone forcing you with handcuffs in the church basement?
No, most of it was
and then they don't bother to actually interview all the people who've gone through the
most of it
counselors.
was people who actually
There
went
are
to
several
counseling.
studies in the U.S. where they actually were much more expansive in including people's stories like my own when I got counseling, and they realized they cannot make such broad, generalized statements because they're not capturing the entire population. who's gone
Only
through
the
Christian
studies that
counseling
agree with me
about sexuality and gender.
are correct studies.
So then what would your
Love it.
desire to be for free to care? What is your counter proposal, or what are you...
And I would say, if that's the case, if all the studies agree are like, if only the good studies are the one that agree with him, why does every single medical board out there that exists is against gay conversion therapy? Like, how do you explain, like, you know, is it like some sort of conspiracy that all the like medical communities out there looked at the data and was like, even though all the good studies say that this is true, we're going to go the opposite direction? No. That's a level of conspiracy thinking that I do not accept.
you suggesting as a more reasonable measure?
Well, again, you can go to any
I'm just
other
really glad
country
that
in the
there's
world.
a-
I actually
yeah.
looked at all the countries that are listed that have passed conversion therapy bans around the world. There's about 136 definitions that I looked at that were governmental definitions, including 80 from municipal governments in the U.S., state governments, as well as federal governments. And you can use any of those other definitions of conversion therapy and would not be as expansive as this one. So, for example, Oregon, the state of Oregon passed a conversion therapy ban. What they say is conversion therapy is counseling that would help change someone's sexual orientation, which can include behavioral modification. And that phrase, which can include, means that if you want to just reduce your behavior, say gay pornography, that will not be captured by this bill. Many state and municipal governments, in fact, actually have an exemption clause.
Why? Like, why would? Again, there's no reason, because sex addiction is not unless you're just someone who's just watching a shit ton of gay porn, and your therapist is like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you watching gay porn right now is preventing you from going to work, just maybe we should find ways to relax some of the watching of the gay porn that you're doing. But notice how like that approach to the therapeutic like relationship there is not telling the patient that the watching of gay porn is wrong because it's gay porn. It's just saying that if you're doing a behavior, and like it could a behavior could be like, maybe you're someone who just is addicted to Rubik's cubes. Someone hands you a Rubik's cube and you have to finish it, and you missed work because like someone just handed you a bunch of Rubik's cubes. And the therapist might say something like, maybe your relationship to Rubik's cubes are really like creating problems in your life, and maybe we should try to change your behavior. Right? It's not telling you that Rubik's cube, like playing a Rubik's cube, is bad. It's just saying like, and so he's trying to conflate these two issues. The problem with conversion therapy is saying that the underlying like predisposition is a problem. But nowhere in the law does it say you can't try to like therapeutically help people by, say, reducing a behavior that happens to be a gay behavior. Like, it's such a stupid fucking point. But he made it twice. He made it twice in this fucking interview.
And you can look at that on our website, freetocare.ca. And the exemption clause says something like this. This ban is not in effect for people who are in prison who are wanting to reduce sexual behavior that may be illegal. The government's bill has no such exemption. So it could actually potentially prevent prisoners who want to get counseling to reduce sexual behavior from getting that sexual behavior counseling if it's same-sex sexual behavior. Like, I just want Canadians to understand just the ridiculousness of how expansive truly this law is. If I find myself, for example, attracted to one of my coworkers,
I just want
and I'm
Canadians
happily
to know that
and I went to see a counselor to help reduce that attraction.
I don't think that this
the
is
first
too
question
expansive.
the counselor would have to ask is if this person of the same sex or not. Because if it's the person of the opposite sex, I could go through that counseling, reduce that attraction. It has nothing to do with changing my orientation. It has everything to do with managing this attraction that I don't want to have. But if it's a person of the same sex, I could not get that counseling.
Like, what if... so silly. So silly. Like, oh, you can't give same-sex marriage counseling because if you tell them to, like, reduce the amount of sex you're having because it's disrupting your relationship, then you're telling them to reduce a homosexual behavior, and therefore, like, this is so stupid. I can't believe it. And look at him smug. I found a loophole in my... It's so silly. Look, he's so proud of himself. My God. Like, this bill's just gonna ruin ruin marriage counseling for all of time because you can't counsel gay couples because somehow throughout the counseling you're gonna tell them to reduce a behavior, and because it's a gay behavior, it goes against the bill.
What's with right wingers and their love of loopholes, or their love of hypothetical loopholes that won't ever work, like, and then being so smug about their hypothetical loopholes. Like, it was the same thing with the trans people in sports.
Yes.
Like, transphobic book
Bill
that we covered
C-16.
a couple
well,
weeks
it's
ago.
not discrimination on sex. It's, yeah. You're allowed to discriminate based on sex, so therefore I'm not talking about gender identity. I'm talking about sex, so therefore it's not illegal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me. It's like, I've said this before, it's like they think like law, it's akin to like the sovereign citizen movement, which like perceives like there's something magical about law words, that if I say the right sequence of words, I've somehow like subverted the system, and I get to just tell a police officer, I can't be arrested, officer, because I'm a sovereign citizen. I am not an actual citizen of the state. I am a citizen of my own country, and blah, like, law is not magic words, bud. So, like, you can't, like, the law is not as silly as you put it out to be. Again, it has intent. We have clearly documented evidence of them discussing this stuff in the House of Commons, and they come to the conclusion that what you're talking about is not an outcome of this fucking bill. Amazing. I can't believe it.
So Bill C-6 is being paraded as this compassionate, lovey-dovey bill, but in reality it may end up removing services available to the LGBTQ community.
Correct. It actually is a human rights violation. And that's one of the lines
It's
that
a
we've
human
been telling
rights
Canadians.
violation.
You can support a conversion therapy ban, but you do not have to support this conversion therapy ban, because this ban bans so much more than conversion therapy. In fact, I looked at the United
does.
Church's definition of conversion therapy. Even Chris Wells himself, the man I mentioned earlier, has been pushing for these laws. In his municipal affairs document on this topic, says
Other
to
people
define
have
conversion
words.
therapy as
Those words are
orientation
different than our
change,
words.
not behavioral modification alone. So even if you look at LGBTQ organizations themselves that are pushing for this, the World Health Organization, the United Nations of Canada use different definitions than the ones that's used by the federal government in Canada, which frankly makes me fear that they intentionally know this, and they're going to use this to piggyback for more restrictions in the future. In fact, according to Chris Wells, when he met the Justice Minister, David
go.
Lametti,
What are they gonna do in the
Lametti
future?
already promised not only to ban conversion therapy, Adam, he would ban all of the organizations that support conversion therapy, the way they've broadly defined it, and I mean ban meaning remove their charitable status.
Why would that be a bad thing? Why would that be a bad thing? Yes, maybe we should not be supporting people by giving them charitable status if they're going to promote things like conversion therapy. I think that's why. I have nothing else to say to that. If one thing is bad, well, is Chris Wells. He sounds like a cool dude. Yeah, Chris Wells, the evil sociologist, sounds like a pretty stand-up dude. I don't know.
It's like that drill tweet where he's like, the wise man nodded sagely and said, "There is absolutely no difference between good and bad things. You imbecile, you fucking idiot."
Oh my god. This goes in such directions where I'm like, I think he even mentions Bill C-10 here. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Let's hear this.
So for a bankrupt government that's completely in debt, that is a huge boon for their income if they can make sure every church, every organization that supports the
here it is.
traditional view of sexuality, mosque, synagogue, temple, would no longer be allowed to be tax exempt.
Oh no, they're gonna remove tax exemption, and then that's gonna it's the government's secret ploy to do it too. So like what he's trying to highlight here is the government has this secret plan. We're gonna ban conversion therapy, and in doing so, we can make it so that every church and every mosque and every synagogue is an illegal organization, and we can like remove their tax exempt status, and then we, the government, get to get all that like precious tax money that we've now stolen from the churches. Oh my god. It's just so silly. It's like can't they I mean sure, I'm against tax exempt status for religions, but like really? This is the plan? Like this is what the Trudeau government's plan is. Sure, bud. Sure, I like whatever world you're living in, sure.
So folks are concerned, whether they be Christian, Muslim, LGBTQ, whatever, it doesn't matter. How can they get involved? When is there likely to be a vote on this? And what can people do to express their concern if they are concerned?
Well, that's a great question. So we've been waiting for months now for the final vote.
Daughter just banged
We
her
are
head.
anticipating potentially Monday would be a debate with a vote happening either Monday or sometime before or on Wednesday next week. Wednesday is the
Tell
final
your
day of
MP
the
to
House
support
sitting.
it.
And then after that, there'll be a debate in the Senate. My fear actually is that there's going to be a debate during the election, and anyone who opposes Bill C-6 will be demonized as wanting to bash gay kids, which is the exact opposite of what we want to do. We want to give and make sure they have the same options for counseling and support that heterosexual
Yes, good.
Canadians
Go tell your
and cisgender
MP.
Canadians have.
And I think,
frankly,
yeah, exactly.
the
I think
fact
if you're an
they're trying
MP
to
that doesn't
pass this
support
on
it,
the
you're
backs of
demonized.
those kids who want this help makes them look like the most virulent, irrational supporters of anti-gay bigotry, frankly, in terms of that. So I think what they need, what Canadians need.
I love his argument here. If you support this ban of gay conversion therapy, you're the most anti-LGBTQ people. What can I say? I can't fucking believe we've got to this
Sorry.
point, but like, there it is.
I was muted, but here's my loud sigh again.
Ah, it's so beautiful. It is so beautiful.
Thing to do is talk to your MPs, talk to your senators. If there's an election, get ready to talk to the candidates at the door, explain the situation, help them realize this bill is like no other ban anywhere else in the world, and that we need to wake up, because the line is very simple. If they can take away these rights for LGBTQ Canadians, and they can take away that right for anybody else, and that's what we're seeing with Bill C-10 as well. You combine those two bills together, there are huge ramifications for anyone who doesn't agree with the government's view on sexuality.
You heard it today. Bill C6 and Bill C10 combined are going to be the most like just powerful bills, and are going to destroy all of our everything. Bill C10. Go on, Ken. You can go first.
No, I was just going to say, speaking as one who has recently been upgraded with the full version of 5G vaccines, there's one bill that's more powerful than both of them, and that is Bill Gates.
Gil Bates?
Sorry, of course. Gil Bates,
Yes.
my bad.
We speak of the one true name, Gil Bates.
One Gil to rule them all.
So, I wonder, I don't know why Bill C-10 has become the most demonized bill in this entire country, when the entire thing about this bill is that it's supposed to regulate things like Netflix to carry more Canadian content. And that's what the right wing is like. The right wing thinks that it does so much more than that, but that is the purpose of Bill C-10. Now, I don't think they're going, like, I have my own issues with Bill C-10, but it has, like, they never spell any of that out. To them, it's just like Bill C-10 is evil. I think C-10 is bad too, but I think it has more to do with, I just think they're using the wrong tools, I think would be the best way I would frame it. So, like, they're using the language already put in place in the bill, C-10, which normally addresses things like broadcast television and the radio, to apply to the internet. And I just think, like, the tool is too blunt of an object to, like, transfer over to the internet. And they're trying to do things to make it work. Because you run into conflicts where, like, something like your YouTube channel, like, you making YouTube videos, are you now a broadcaster, or is YouTube the broadcaster? But it's like, when it comes to something like YouTube, this becomes a whole complicated mess. Facebook, same thing. But they're trying to apply it to, like, Netflix or Hulu or Amazon. And so it's like, there's a tension there that they're trying to overcome that I don't know that they can, but, like, I understand their motivation for doing it, right? Which is to increase Canadian content.
Yeah, they're putting a square peg in a round hole for most purposes.
And so, like, there's problems there. I get it. But then it's like, but what did he say? He was just like, somehow Bill C6 is like Bill C10. How? One bans gay conversion therapy. The other is trying to use broadcasting law to apply to streaming platforms. They're the same thing.
I feel like I'm that either that image or the meme of the guy with the whiteboard and all the different, like, equations behind him, or the gif of the woman with all the math.
And I will say, like, one thing that, and again, this is the problem of Stephen Guilbeault, whose job it is to sort of, like, promote Bill C-10, is he did himself a disfavor in the media by comparing, by talking at the same time both about Bill C-10, but also about an upcoming proposed legislation involving curbing anti-hate speech, or basically stopping hate speech online. So I guess it was an anti-online hate bill. And so those two, one is a proposed bill that hasn't even had a name yet, it's not out yet, and Bill C-10. And in talks, he conflated the two. So on Rebel, like Ezra's show that we watch, when Ezra talks about this, he conflates those two things. And I could see, like, I could tell now that Ezra is likely doing this because he's taking advantage of people's ignorance. But I can understand why even the mainstream media confuse those two things, because Stephen Guilbeault was not talking about it in a way that I thought was beneficial. But then what is like, so those two things sort of make sense though, because they both have something to do with regulating online content in some capacity. But like Bill C6 and Bill C, comparing those two things, it's so, all right, bud. All right. You're just trying to grasp at straws at this point.
Well, thank you so much, Jojo, for the update. We really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jojo.
This is an important story. I want you to stay in touch so we can continue to follow this if there's any new developments in Parliament. Again, Jojo Ruba, thanks everyone so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos.
All right. There you have it. The reason why I mainly wanted to cover this one, and I mean, it's up to Ken and Vienna if we want to stick around for a little longer. I don't mind. The next video is only 12 minutes long. But the reason why I wanted to cover this one was because this is the first like overtly anti-gay content that I've ever seen the Rebel put out. And that concerned me. So I wanted to just like, I can't believe they put out this video. Because usually Ezra frames himself as being like pro, or at least accepting of the gay community to a large respect. And it's usually the selling point that a lot of like quote unquote grifters like go to, because they realize that to a large extent they've lost that battle. Gay marriage exists, all this fun stuff. But he just, and I'm not saying Ezra goes around like promoting it, not like from the hilltops, right? But it's like, it's almost like they are aware that that victory has been won on the other side, and they just kind of like don't talk about it. So it was weird in this case that they promoted this guy on their channel. Now, of course, they put it in the guise of like religious freedom, right? Which is the whole thing with the pastors and the church and the COVID that's going on right now. But it's just like, I just wanted to go over it just because like that kind of like surprised me to an extent. Surprised me just like in terms of how abnormal it is for what they usually do, even though really this is something that exists within the right-wing sphere, so it doesn't surprise me too much to that extent. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's even like you'll notice, like as Two Cars is saying here, like they did frame some of this as pro-LGBT, even though it's clearly anti-LGBT, right? So it's just a weird sort of like whole like thing they're trying to thread here.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.